the language barrier is gone. If you ever thought you needed to learn a coding language, you just don't need that anymore. English is your coding language. Like, I really want people to internalize that. You can build anything you want, and wherever you get stuck, the agent will just unblock it for you.
And I think we're at a pivot point where if you or someone on your team has the basic skills to get into this and start doing it, there are significant chunks of automation of your process and your technology that you can own yourselves instead of pay for. And it's not hard to go end up paying $50 or $100 or $150,000 on a CLM system.
Well, that's why I'm hopeful for, like, people saying humans won't have anything to do. And I'm like, no, like, humans still need to bring the imagination to the table and the decision making to the table ultimately.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Proc N Roll, your guide to practical procurement. Today, we have another jam session with the one, the only, the Zach from London. This man has been playing with AI now for, I don't know, probably not longer than anybody, but longer than most people I know in procurement. We've got some really cool things to talk about, a little bit of show and tell. I've been spending more and more time in AI and lots of different tools and technologies, and I continue to be dumbfounded by the amount of automation that I can bring to the table, and that I can go back and lean on later, right? In most cases, what I'm automating are things that I'm doing on a repetitive basis, and it is really cool to be able to kind of invest that time. It's a little bit more time up front to get that automation up and running with the agent, but once you have it up and running, then you come back the next time, you're like, wow, this actually just saved me loads of time. So really excited to dive into this. Zach, I know you've been working hard on a number of different AI projects. I'm curious to kind of, like, before we get started, I'd love to hear your kind of observations on looking back 18 to 24 months about your views of AI and where AI is now. Is it moving faster or slower than you anticipated? And is it over or under delivering what you anticipated?
Yeah, it's super interesting, Conrad. I think it's a bit of both, right? It's moving fast. Let's put it that way. I think most people are struggling to keep up. A lot of people are, you see all of the publications, everyone's writing about AI and everyone's got a thought and an opinion about AI. Not many people understand kind of the underlying technology, precisely how it works. Meanwhile, while all that's going on, the labs are working on the frontier, and that's moving all the time. You've got open source models coming now out of China and other places that are very competitive. And so enterprises have all kinds of new questions to ask themselves around, well, which models do I use? Do I deploy a model internally? Should I use open source? Where do I use the frontier? Like, it's, basically it's proliferated almost every aspect of working life, right? And that part is not the bit that surprised me. I think I saw that coming, and I think we're going to get deeper down that track. I think AI will permeate virtually everything that we do eventually. So yeah, it's really exciting times. And I don't know, how have you found it? What's your experience been like?
Well, I think a year ago when you showed me, what were you, like a Zapier harness, like tying into some probably OpenAI or other models to do some back-end automation. I think that if I remember that episode in that show and tell, you had created a CLM system to analyze documents. And after that, I mean, you inspired me to go sit down and actually try and do it. You really did. So, I don't know if that makes you feel good or bad. Probably good, because I know you're such an evangelist for the technology. And so, last summer I was playing around trying to get it done, and I got really frustrated. I mean, just straight up. I did a number of vibe coding projects that just I couldn't bring to the finish line, and I just kind of got stuck. So as people were talking about agentic workflows a year ago in that context, it really didn't strike a chord with me. And I was like, I can't see how this is really, like, it just felt like another, voodoo word that people were saying, agentic AI, instead of just the AI that we like quickly understood within ChatGPT. And then this year, back in the February timeframe, when Casey on my team started playing around with OpenClaw and started showing me what he was doing. And then, 6 weeks later, he set me up with OpenClaw, have my own little agent. I still have it running. Then all of a sudden it was just like mind blowing for me, because it went from last year, I think, you're not like a software engineer kind of, background, but you figured out the Zapier and the vibe coding and some of that stuff. You really had to roll up your sleeves to make it work. I mean, I took basic language, computer basic language in college, because I couldn't get my brain wrapped around the magic of ones and zeros and how that could actually be a language like Pascal, because I could kind of understand Pascal as a logical language. And then I was like, but how does that go to ones and zeros? Because I know it's just really ones and zeros moving around to this hardware to do all this stuff. And even going down to basic language, that didn't solve that problem for me. So I have some background programming, some basic classes. But yeah, it just didn't work. And then springtime comes around, and now I'm like putting in prompts into OpenClaw agent, and it's just doing what I want it to do. And if it gets stuck, I just cut and paste the screen, and I put the screen in there and say, well, this is what it said. What do I do? How do I fix it? And it completely, like that one thing alone completely changed my relationship with AI, because anywhere I got stuck last summer, I didn't really, maybe it was working that way for you last summer, and you could just cut and paste it, but I couldn't make that transition and make it work. If you asked me today to create a CLM with AI and just kind of homegrown, call it vibe code or whatever, I could like, what is today? Today's Tuesday. By Monday, I could have you enterprise ready, up and running, good to go, CLM. Not just basic archive. I'm talking CLM with AI, reading contracts, metadata, making analysis of a document across all documents. Like that problem itself, it would be very easy to solve with the level of AI that's available to everybody today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see, that's what's happened, Conrad, and what's been my experience building with all these tools, starting with the basics like Zapier and N8N and all these, and then graduating to more advanced tools like Cursor and Claude Code and Codex, OpenAI. Couple things happened. One is I saw how much more powerful these technologies were getting, so how much smarter they were. That's why nowadays, if you want to build a contract CLM type tool, it's very easy for you to do, right? You just need to understand some of the basics from an engineering point of view. So you need to understand, for example, at a very basic level, a contract system has a database with different fields in it, like that's pretty much all you really need, because AI will carry you the rest of the way through. The thing that's been amazing to me, and you mentioned the software engineering point, what's really kind of enabled me to go really deep is the language that you learned when you were younger, Conrad. It's sort of disappeared. It's sort of melted away. And now it's a mixture of like code and English, right? Of actual, or like whatever language you use. Like actual language is now the coding language. It's like English. Like that's what you actually use to build and code things now. That's what's been really fantastic. And that's what all these big providers have been sinking, massive amounts of capital into these coding agents. And that's why the coding agents have gotten really good. Now, the thing around software engineering, coding is not the same as engineering. You still need to learn about how you set up a good system, how you secure it, what a database is, what a UI is, and a bunch of things like that. But a lot of people have that, at least a good concept of it. So the question becomes like, okay, well, you need to learn some of the principles at the next level around how you make that work, etc.
But listen, I would question that a bit, because, and I've got Claude Code open here. So I think just for fun, I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, so here, and I can't see your face right now. That's okay. I know what you guys look like, but so I'm in Claude Code now, and this question of I want to create a CLM. So like anybody can get to the place I am at right now, right? You just go to Claude AI. And then you say, and by the way, this is the desktop download. And I found this to be a more powerful way for me to do coding than just, I think you can kind of do this up inside the web page to some degree, but I would get the application running on my system. I've gone in here and I've set up I hope this isn't going to show anything sensitive. I don't think it will here, but I've set up an account. It keeps track of usage here. Right now, I'm on $100 a month plan, and I've been doing a lot, and I'm doing it with Opus right now for the most part. As I get closer to Thursdays, I move over to Fable, because Fable is the it's kind of the frontier model that can like break into the Pentagon kind of stuff, right? So this is really
I'm the
good.
other way around, Conrad. I'm like drawing my Fable draws down way quicker, and then when I'm out of Fable, I move to Opus, which is the more available model.
So that's funny. I kind of and at the moment I'm at right now, I'm going to actually switch over to Fable, because what I want to do now is sort of the architecture and the ideation up front, which I want like the smartest model to tell me how to do this. But you said like I have to know database that has a database and it has fields and it has all this other stuff. I'm just going to approach this as if I'm any procurement person going, hey, look, I want to create a CLM, and I'm going to say, hey, look, okay, so I'm just going to talk about the outcome. I want, I haven't done this. This is all live. I want to create a contract management for procurement. I have no idea how to approach this project.
I know exactly what I was going to tell you.
The best way and structure and whatever to make sure we end up with great results.
Yeah, but you see, Conrad, you've missed like what it can give you now. You've given it to Fable, right? If Fable's smart, Fable should ask you, what is your scope here? You're a one-man kind of band building this application here.
Sure. So but that's exactly my point. That's exactly my point, though. Like I don't have to at this point of a project understand that I need to design a database and I need to design on some language. These solutions are so good and so smart. And this will, Fable's going to run a little bit, because it's going to go look. It's not just thinking, hey, this is it. It's looking across everything. It can use. See, I don't know if you saw it, searching the web now. What is Contract Lifecycle? I didn't even say CLM here, and it's running out. It's finding out what requirements are. So the ability to use the AI now to go build fundamental elements of automation in your business process, in your operating model, in your tech stack. You saw what I just put there. I'm running on $100. I'm on one of the best models in the world, and I just put like a nonsensical prompt in here, and it's going to come back. And I mean, you said you know exactly what it's going to say, but what's your confidence level that starting here, I'm going to end up at a working CLM?
And in a week's time, if you don't know much about, actually standing up software, and you don't know about databases, and you don't know about this and that, you get to a pretty good place, but you wouldn't be able to roll it out reliably, and handle hundreds of contracts and all the features work perfectly, etc. That'll take more time. The reason I'm saying this, Conrad, is just because this learning journey that you're going to go on, you've asked it this question. It's now going to go through that whole process with you around what features do you want, what do you want to prioritize, and really my main thing here is the clearer you are about what you want, the easier and faster this process is, right? So if you go in with a generic, I just want to build a contract database, that is going to take you longer, and it can potentially over-engineer, by the way. It can do more than what you actually want. And oftentimes it will just over-engineer the whole design and the solution, and it ends up wasting a lot of your time. Versus you going in, being very clear with what you want, the specific features that you want, keep it narrow, keep it focused, know what your phase one is, and then what features you might add later, etc.
So let's add another dimension. I think this is where you're telling me to go. Like, help me write a prompt for Claude Code. That is an ideal CLM business spec.
I don't even think that's it, Conrad. I think the question is for me, it would be, I want to build a CLM. What should my first slice be? And the models love this word, slice. If I want to start from zero, and then it's going to give you options. It's going to tell you things like, you need this database, you need at minimum these kinds of fields. You're going to need maybe a renewal notification. You're going to need some kind of UI, and it'll walk you through. But let's see here what you got. So,
can you see that text, or is it too small?
I can read it. Yeah.
So, like, again, it was like a really stupid, simple prompt, but I'm using AI now to actually create a more sophisticated prompt to take back into, frankly, Claude Code is going to get me to basically to some point of this. If it comes back with the right ideas, because it's looking at requirements, it's going to come back and say, well, what do you want in here?
But you got to go through it, Conrad. Like, I'll give you an example, right? Look at number 4, execution integration architecture. One of the subpoints says native e-signature integration, DocuSign, Adobe Sign. If you just gave that to Claude now, Claude's going to go and run with it, and it's going to include that in your build plan. But between you and me, DocuSign, Adobe Sign, these are not things that I need out the box by Tuesday, and they probably won't run reliably by Tuesday. There are the core features that I need to focus on first. But the AI isn't doing that for you, right? Because you just said, I need a contract management system. You haven't told it, I only have 1 week. I don't know much about technology. I'm a one-man band doing this stuff. If you tell it those 3 things, I guarantee you the output is going to be way more applicable to you because you've given it that context. It can't infer those things.
Oh my gosh, I can't type with everyone watching.
You don't need to spell correctly either. Like my spelling is actually dreadful. I get this question all the time, by the way. Like, people are like, is it okay if you make spelling mistakes? Yes, without a doubt. Like, type away.
Okay, so I'm basically looking at their prompt, which is what I was going to do anyway, Zach. Which is like, okay, so this is like everything, right? I don't need redlining. I don't, and e-signature. We'll leave that like that just for fun. Automation, right? Phased approach.
I'll tell it the most load-bearing thing for you, Conrad, is what your resources. Are you assuming you're a one-person band creating this?
So let me say I have a procurement team of 10 people or something.
But who's going to work on the project? Who's got time to actually build this thing with you?
Well, I'm just going to build it because I'm a dedicated CPO that's going to work nights and weekends to get this thing done. All right, so here we go. CLM for 5, phase works better. Phase 1, repository and intake. Single source of truth. Phase 2, authoring and approvals. Okay, phase 3, execution and automation, advanced collaboration and AI. So then I can kind of keep going through the cycle, right? I can come back through, and we don't have to we're not going to build this whole CLM on the show today, but I can carry that prompt and I can come back over here to essentially where so this is where Claude Code got, right? So Claude Code is basically saying, hey, discovery before code, how do you want it to work? We need a repository first. Build and then buy. Open source is the real decision. Mid-market SaaS runs. Get the domain model up front. If you build FastPath API, what I need to go further, is this an internal tool for Graphite's own procurement, so it knows who I am, procurement team, or what? Who owns it? Procurement, legal, finance, rough volume. So I guess, Zach, and let me stop sharing now. But I guess what I'm trying to point out and really show to people in a super practical way is that this isn't rocket science. Like, the level that went like in 10 minutes from a stupid prompt to a pretty sophisticated emerging business requirements document or process. And in the case of the AI, this could be the expert. Like, I have Zach I can talk to anytime, and we can bounce ideas, and he can start talking to me about architecture. These AI models can do the same thing within an hour of back and forth. It would not be hard for me to have a pretty reasonable plan to bang this thing out, right? That would, high confidence I could do that. And then start pushing that into code. And by the way, I have like 3 or 4 different development projects I'm working on, like, between things, right? Because what happens in Claude Code is it keeps asking my permission. By the way, Zach, if you know how to get it to stop asking my permission to do stuff, please tell me. I've asked it to tell me how to do that, and it's given me a script, and I put it in, and it still keeps asking me, is it okay if it proceeds? So that's
there's a setting there. So it's two levels to it. One is there's an actual setting where the permissions for accessing stuff on your computer that you can switch off. But be careful with that, because you might give access to literally everything on your computer, and therefore Anthropic has access to everything on your computer. Or the other way is like if it keeps asking you within the conversation, so not actually throwing up like approve this or authorize this button, but just asking you, should I proceed? Then you can just tell it, please be more directive, like only only ask my approval in these situations, and it will remember that in context. Especially if you're using a very good model like Fable or Opus, like it'll carry that through the whole conversation. But I just want to say, Conrad, I think that one of my key learnings from all my building, exactly the way you showed it, is this: put all the time up front in that requirements, in the design, in the back and forth chatting with your agent copilot. Your gut will want to go and start building this thing and start coding it, right? And I think everyone goes through this path. Is like straight away you launch into a nice UI and it's vibe coded. And I see so many vibe coded applications now, and they don't really work, but people want to show kind of what their vision is. I guarantee you, in most cases, that's not the product you actually want, because you stare at it for a bit, and after a few days or weeks, you go back and you think, well, actually, if I had to do this over again, I would do it this way, and then you go and do it again. So, and then you learn in that process that you should just have that conversation, get really clear and precise with the design, the detail. Yes, you can spin up mock-ups and stuff if you need help along the way, but invest the time in the documentation and then build. Then start actually coding, right? So don't launch yourself straight into coding, because you'll end up scrapping it and starting over. You do that over and over again. That might be helpful if you're learning and you just want to practice and play around. But for serious builds, you have to put a lot of thinking up front. I'll give you an example, especially if you've got a more sophisticated system. Once it's actually a production grade system, any change you make hits like, and you know this, Conrad, you run a tech firm, so it's, and you've told me this, it's like 100 different surfaces of your application. And it's like a small UI tweak, but it's going to hit, so my point is that's when you're getting into like more software engineering level, more systems kind of thinking level, but it's also where you can get real value because it means your application's more secure, sturdier, won't fail, will work as planned, can be scaled and extended later, and people will actually use it. That's the key thing. The adoption will be there. So spend the time having those conversations and finessing the designs that you want to go up and build.
I think that's great advice, and I've actually seen in the things you've shown me in the past, even just I know you've invested a lot to create an agent to help you write and do research. And the level of training that you've put into that agent around like good original thinking instead of just, regurgitating internet nonsense is really, really good. So, everybody, what Zach's talking about here is truly a best practice, and it's proven out by the quality of what you get on the other side of this. I'm going to set that aside for just a moment. And I would say to everyone that's listening right now, my challenge for you, because you're probably not this far into this conversation if you're already like vibe coding and creating apps with AI at the same level of, close to the sophistication that Zach and I are. And I would say relative to procurement people, Zach, you and I are probably in the leading pack of, I don't know, let's say 10 or 20% for sure. So there's a lot of people out there that haven't had the courage and the confidence to go out and try and play around with the application. So in that context, which is those of you that haven't even tried something like what I just showed, go try it. And don't worry about messing up. Don't worry about not having a good enough prompt up front. Don't worry about spending $100 that, whatever. If this is coming out of your own pocket, and Zach, you're a testament to this, it is worth every penny. Like the learning and the investing that you can get out of this right now as an individual contributor or as a leader to understand how this stuff works. Not only will it sort of, you'll have this epiphany, like your whole mind will open up in terms of what what you can do. It will begin to reveal to you the potential of what the future of procurement looks like. And we all kind of have our opinions about that, but it's a much more expansive view of AI as a participant in the procurement process, or as the manager of the procurement process over time, right? Depending on how, of time and sophistication and your willingness to give AI permission to do things. But yeah, like, you got to try, and don't be afraid of this, because you can be as dumb as I just was. And even coming out of that, it will blow your mind what you can create. And then you can retreat back and you can start again with the learning that you went through, and kind of go, okay, like, this is the end, kind of an end in mind outcomes, very clear requirements, documentation.
Yeah, it's exactly like I said, Conrad, earlier. The language barrier is gone. If you ever thought you needed to learn a coding language, you just don't need that anymore. English is your coding language. I really want people to internalize that. You can build anything you want, and wherever you get stuck, the agent will just unblock it for you. Agent will write the code. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, even if an agent writes loads of code and something's broken in your application, the agent will propose fixes, and you can ask the agent to explain to you which parts of the code and why. And you'll get to a point where you realize you don't need to understand every line of the code. You just need to understand how the code works, basically, right? And that's explainable in just normal English language, right? But it brings another point for me, Conrad, which is, if you're a procurement leader, let's say you've got you're head of procurement, you got a small team already, and there's this plethora of applications and tools that you can go and either build or buy. How would you approach that, Conrad? Would you be delegating to your team to go off and build, for example, the CLM application, versus finding one on the market, whether that's graphite, if it's the right kind of size, versus something that's off the shelf? Or how does this tie in with, how does this whole thing tie in with the build versus buy kind of question for you?
Well, there's a lot of chatter going around in the podcast circuits about, okay, vibe coding was interesting, but people aren't going to vibe code an enterprise app. It's not, there's questions about security, or there's questions about upgrades, a whole bunch of things like that. So I would say, first off, a lot of tech stack exists today, of software that's in the procurement space, simply because people were unable with our internal IT teams to build that level of software and automation. It's not like somebody couldn't build it themselves before, but they couldn't do it. Like, they needed their IT team and some engineers to go out and put piece stuff together in order to do it. That creates all sorts of challenges. I mean, I can't tell you how many times decisions have been made to either use the existing ERP or to have IT build it, and you get some sort of minimum viable product that's it's probably like what I would be done with in 3 days on my CLM here. It's a little bit, halfway done. And then IT's off to their next priority, and I need upgrades, and no one's there to help me. And, so I've got problems now, because I do need to kind of, hey, this thing needs to do this and it needs to do that. No one will help me do it, and I have no one that's capable of that. I think if I look across the tech stack and I ask myself questions, about where in my tech stack do I build and where do I buy, for sure within 12 months, the ability to build like what we just talked about is just going to be way easier even in 12 months, for sure. And I think we're at a pivot point where if you or someone on your team has the basic skills to get into this and start doing it, there are significant chunks of automation of your process and your technology that you can own yourselves instead of pay for. And it's not hard to go end up paying $50 or $100 or $150,000 on a CLM system, right? Or some other bit of tool that you have. So I would be very I'd be really mindful about what is my core, like what is the core I've got to connect to. And I think in most cases that's going to be the enterprise, whether it's SAP or Oracle or NetSuite or whatever it is, but there's a core that's going to run things for the enterprise, do the financial reporting. And I need to be able to work with that core with, my process is going to end up there. Like that's where the PO, the invoice and payment is probably going to take place. It could be a layer of P2P, but I think that's going to get compressed as well. And then I've got these other pieces, and I have the question of like keeping track of sourcing projects. How many organizations have I talked to that use a spreadsheet to just kind of keep track of all the intake and all the projects that the sourcing team's working on? I've got CLM, I think, RFP automation. I resisted getting into Scout RFP for a long time because I was like, hey, the spreadsheet works fine. Like there are so many little things that happen inside of procurement that you could build these little applications around to go do that instead of spend, 50 or 100 or, as a group, you could easily spend $500,000 or $1 million on technology. And I can do that myself now. And would I do that? I would say, I'm really interested in what you think, but what would be the criteria that says, hey, this has to be bulletproof enough that something can't go wrong? But remember, how many companies I run into, even today at an enterprise level, that I ask them where their contracts are and they're sitting in some sort of SharePoint or some sort of Google Drive because, they've struggled to get a CLM that they're really happy with that's running things. Like this isn't, when you look at the alternatives about like the spreadsheet running sourcing projects, the alternative is like a spreadsheet with no automation. A lot of the automation I'm building today actually feeds back into a spreadsheet. The AI goes and does stuff and then it updates the spreadsheet. Like that's a totally acceptable automation to go build out to accomplish, an outcome that you're looking for.
But you'll never convince me. And I love spreadsheets, by the way. Like I grew up, I became an expert in Excel. I love Excel. Okay. But you're never going to convince me a spreadsheet is the best format for RFPs. The reason it works and the reason most companies end up using spreadsheets is because all the other tools out there don't seem to do a good job of the UI and the experience, right? They seem to be like pages and screens that don't really serve a purpose. And a spreadsheet is like something that you open, you can see everything in one place, everyone can see it, and it's like a giant table, right? And it lends itself pretty well to writing RFPs. But it's a good example of something that I would vibe code, Conrad, in the business. Like, yes, RFP tracker and RFP builder kind of application and tool. I think the trick will be when I say vibe code, and this comes back to what you said at the beginning, it really won't take a week, right? It will take quite a bit of time because like I said, I think getting really clear and sharp on exactly what you need to make this the perfect tool for you and your team takes time. It's not the coding that's the blocker anymore. The blocker is now, what is it that I actually want? What does it actually need to look like? How will people actually use it? Will they use it? What will prevent them from using it? So what will prevent them from, what will prevent your application from not being adopted the same way you buying that application, like many companies do, and people don't even end up using those applications. So that's, I think, the question. I think UI is such a huge part of it. The actual user interface, the user experience. This word keeps coming up nowadays in the world of AI is all about taste, right? So now everyone's saying that now that anyone can build anything, it's all about your taste. I really believe that. I think it all comes down to like judgment and taste, and especially, making it as contextually relevant for you and your process and your team as possible. That is a time-consuming activity, but it's worth doing. And to your question around what's not worth doing, I'm also a bit fuzzier on this, Conrad. But if I think about an ERP, I would never advise someone to go and code their own ERP and maintain their own ERP. I think part of it comes down to the size of the application and the regulatory sort of supports, for that application needs to actually support. Like you wouldn't vibe code an RFP. Similarly, like take a graphite type of tool. You've got a whole network, Conrad, right? Like no one's going to be able to go and vibe code a graphite and get, 100,000, 500,000 suppliers to register. And, it's like there are tools out there that they're plugged into your data. They're plugged into your system. They plug into your ERPs. And those are the ones I think that are far more technical. Basically, they're not your core competence. Like you as procurement, managing supplier data is not really a procurement competency. It's something that procurement needs to do. For example, same thing with like managing POs and recs and matching. Like it's a job that procurement is responsible for, but it's not something that's a core competence of what procurement does. The core competence stuff is upstream, like you talked about. It's the intake, the requisition, the request, the RFP generation, maybe contract generation and negotiation preparation. These are kind of the core strategic sourcing, if you like, activities most people know about. And that's why I say procurement people are in a great position to vibe code those kinds of applications because that is the bread and butter of procurement. And it's, you will know how to implement that for your particular business and your particular team.
So
better than buying.
I want to go back in a second here. So don't let me forget to kind of debate with you the spreadsheet and the RFP in just a minute. But I would say we have this whole leadership and decision making sort of series that we're running in parallel with these conversations. And I would say that any decision that you're making, you need to be mindful about like the impact of getting it wrong, and the impact of getting it late. Like what if it takes me, I don't know, another year to get internal approval to buy a CLM or to get IT to build me a CLM or whatever it might be. The amount of automation that you can do on a part of your process that has low, let's say low cost of failure, right? As long as I don't put all of my documents into this place that blows up and then my documents are gone. Like I'm smart enough to go, hey, I've got a backup for all these documents. I've been keeping them in SharePoint. I'm going to keep a parallel backup over here, but I'm going to kind of work with them through this lens of this application I'm building. So for me, it's sort of, I would look at this and say, you're right. Would I build an ERP? The CFO would, or not an RFP, but an ERP, the CFO would never let me do that because the CFO knows the reporting to the street, investors and everything else, like you're not going to screw with that stuff. It's just the stakes of failure are way too high. And as you move from that continuum, which could be the same as like launching a rocket ship, right? Life and all sorts of other things are at stake versus you start moving across the continuum. It's like, well, it's totally acceptable for me to do something like this, because if it fails, I just pivot right back to my spreadsheet or back to my SharePoint, right? And in the meantime, what I'm trying to push for everybody is you're learning. Like the amount of learning that's going to come from taking one of these things and saying, let's see if we can automate this ourselves is going to be insane. Everyone involved in that project, it's going to be like getting what used to be an MBA or a master's degree or something over the course of like 3 to 6 months. It's just going to be so enlightening and so helpful as you start laying out and working in this new world of AI.
100%. No, I think you put it the right way, Conrad. Yeah, like the cost of failure, I think is, a huge metric you should think about. I think, look, I think if I look at procurement's number one complaint is always like the amount of admin that it's drowning in and the amount of non-strategic, non-value added activities. Like, AI is your savior basically in that respect. Like you can automate all this admin away. Yes, there are questions around how you do it in a efficient way and in a way that, everything's kind of joined up. But you don't need to, like even at certain points. I think like to take a lot of teams probably drafting RFPs today with AI, right, Conrad? But I think it's done at the individual level. So each category manager will just use AI to draft the RFP. The next level for you as a procurement leader is, all right, what are now my standards for drafting these RFPs, that sit across these different categories, right? Let's write these down. And then the step after that is, okay, well, can we maybe create an agent that will then do it and do it consistently and make sure all our protections are in place. And that's how you get everyone sort of using the same kind of tool to generate very similar quality, similar standard of RFP and documentation, etc.
So since you build me such a nice bridge back to RFPs, let me just give you my observation. And this became clear to me as I sort of built. There's a slide I use when I talk about graphite, and I kind of show the tiles of the procurement process from left to right that kind of go, hey, you have a need, and you go through this step. You have CLM, you have sourcing, you have all of these different tiles have gone through so much. So much technology has been introduced to these tiles across the stream over the last 30 years that I've been in procurement. But let's take CLM as a great example, and then I'll get on to RFP. What I see in CLMs is that there's this desire to do redlining inside the CLM. And so let's just say that Zach and Conrad's, the ZC CLM is created, and it has this ability for our suppliers and our customers to go into the CLM and to make changes to the clauses. And it's really cool. It keeps track of it all, and everything's there, and everyone can see the whole thing in one shared document. Hooey. Like, that is a complete waste of everybody's time, because you're going to give it to the supplier, and the supplier's legal is going to download it into Word, which is the killer app for legal, is Word. With AI, trust me, with AI, but they're going to put it in Word, and Word is the killer app for redlining. And so it all kind of goes down to the minimum, kind of the lowest common denominator is Word. And then even within my own legal team, what do you think they're working in? They're working in Word. And so this CLM that you and I invested and built and thought we were going to do all this fancy redlining, it becomes a pipeline to pass the Word log document back and forth. And so it can do version, we should think more about version management and tracking and checking in and checking out and a bunch of things like that, because we then understand that the users are working in Word on both sides of the equation, right? RFPs are the same way. If you send me an RFP today and you name the RFP tool, how do you think I'm going to interact with that? I'm going to download it into Word. I'm going to download it into Excel, because I have Excel documents after Excel documents full of questions and answers that I can do matching in Excel, that your fancy little RFP portal isn't sophisticated enough to help me do that speed and automation. I'm going to answer all those things back in Excel. I'm going to push it back up into the portal, and then you're going to download it over to your team. And how many procurement people do you think are really doing their end-to-end analysis sitting inside of RFP XYZ? No, they're downloading it back into Excel. They're shipping it around their teams. They're working with it. So, I just think it's wild. Now, I will say I have a strong conviction that AI as part of these portals has the potential to really change things. Like, I could go to a RFP portal in the future and I can just give it past RFP questions and answers, like that whole library of mine. I can connect the two. Either my agent or their agent can just hum its way through it without necessarily downloading into Excel to do that. And I think that's going to kind of change things when AI really starts to create that bridge instead of the need to take it down to Excel.
Yeah. I mean, AI doesn't care about whether it's Excel or whatever other format you give it, right? That's the great thing about AI. You can use Excel, you can use Word, you can use, you can just send it an email, like if it's set up correctly, and the agent will just maintain and structure all that data in the back and track it. So, but it's a really interesting point you made, Conrad. Maybe you're right, because I completely agreed with you on the legal thing around Word. Like, totally agree. And it's a really good example of what I mean when I say think about what it is you want to build. So as part of your CLM tool, did you actually want to build a Word editor? Like, that's a whole bunch of features do you need that in your tool, or do you just connect to Word, right? Like, that's a kind of product decision that you make when you're trying to build with AI. But the RFP one's interesting for me as well, Conrad, because you're absolutely right. People just download it into Excel. They'll then share it with their teams. Everyone's in this Excel file responding across these different grids. But I just find it like this can't be the best way to do it, but it is how people are.
If you think about, like, for the vision that I said, where AI is going to interact with that RFP portal, the RFP portal kind of needs to become headless, right? It needs to have an MCP on it so that I can go, my AI isn't trying to browse web pages. It's actually going into the core. And that's kind of what people are trying to do when they put it down. They're just going down to the data elements and putting it in Excel. So it becomes more, you can bring more automation directly to it. Like the breadcrumbs that we've been doing as human agents are so similar to what kind of needs to happen as we go into this new generation of automation through, AI helping us through these steps in the process. So Zach, I know you've spent, and we should probably get to wrapping it up here in the next few minutes, but I know you've spent a lot of time building out AI, an AI solution to do things. I don't know if you care to talk about it openly, but as we were talking before the show, you mentioned that you're kind of going into version number 2, and you've had a lot of learnings that you brought. Remember, what I want everyone to walk away with this is, I can do this. I should do this. I'm going to go get an app, and if your work won't let you use Claude code, but you want to, do it on your home computer. Like you can build a fake CLM at home and have the same level of learning almost that you would in the office. And you're like, well, I don't have those contracts. Well, AI can create 100 fake contract documents for you to play with, right? There's a whole bunch of ways to do this, but your learnings in going through your phase, and I know this iteration 1 wasn't really 1. It was probably like iteration 10 of other things you've tried. But what's the big learnings that you've gone through between your version 1 that we talked about a couple of weeks ago and now as you're getting into version number 2?
Okay, so just sort of for people's awareness, so this is around, I'm going to call it an agent that can basically execute the procurement process for you, right? From intake all the way through to RFP. It can email different people, get requirements, get everyone to agree on the requirements, create specification, get that. So the whole process basically.
Folks, I've seen it, and it is stunning what Zach has created. Like very, very cool.
Yeah. I want to take on a big challenge like this because, again, this is part of the bets that I wanted to make, Conrad. This is where I see the future of work going. I do think all of this work is going to be automated. And I think a lot of the questions people have today are around, well, where does the governance sit in those kinds of situations where AI is executing everything? And so that's been my number one sort of focus is like, okay, how do we make a governed harness, they call it, for agents executing a business process and procurement. My biggest lesson between 1 and 2 was I suffered so much in 1, failed so many times in 1, had to build things and then tear them down and then build new things within the same application so many times that the application it wasn't buggy, it worked, but it just wasn't as clean and efficient and sort of architected is the right word. It wasn't architected in the most efficient, elegant way, if you like, for what it needed to do. And that was because it was an iterative process. So when I came to write version 2, that was way thinner of an application. It was much more refined. It worked way more reliably, right? Faster. Also was cheaper and more context efficient. So the reason that was the case was because all of the things that I learned from Project 1. Now, taking this all the way back to the beginning, Conrad, when we asking people to build things with AI, like my version 2, why did I ask myself this question? I've been building with AI the whole time. Why didn't Claude Code just tell me, like the first time around, like this is how you need to do it? And this is why I think like AI is not taking over everyone's jobs. The reason is you need to tell the agent exactly what it is that you want. But if you don't know what you want and how it all needs to hang together, the agent can give you ideas, can take you down different paths, but it's not going to give you the right answer. I've said this many times. AI can never give you the right answer. It give you a set of plausible answers and plausible set of directions, but you need to make those decisions. And so it's just been really interesting for me to learn that because, it just showed me that AI can't just magically whip up the perfect thing that I had in my head because I had to go through that process of creative destruction, if you want to call it that, right? And then when I learned everything, then the version 2, when I started blank, I was like, wow, this works perfectly because I designed it from the bottom up with everything that I needed the first time around. So that would be my sort of lesson is the whole purpose of building with agents is for you to figure out what you need to figure out, to really get clear on the thing that you're trying to build. That in the past you would have done this, but it would have taken you way longer, and you would have had to read books, and you would have had to go on Google and read websites and speak to people. And now you've got all of that at the tip of your finger. So it just means you can do it that much faster. And guys, I'm not a software engineer. I would never claim to be that, but the amount that I know about software engineering after just 2 years of like doing all this stuff is insane. I would have never like understood the principles I understand today by having to learn how to code first, and then, learning front end, and then learning back end, and then learning, whatever it is, right? I'm still not an engineer, but I know enough to understand systems, and that's been purely from working with agents and AI. And so that's why you should go and do it.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were just talking that last piece about the agile software development process, where you just you build and learn and build and learn, and you're kind of tweaking as you go. It's interesting that and I know you did that through your application in version 1. So you kind of built all this stuff, but then it sounds like it wasn't a huge project to kind of go back to the beginning now that you sort of have the end understood and say, okay, we're going to build it clean this time with the right architecture, and it's going to be better. And your experience has been that it is better. Is that what you're saying? It not only like the outcome and the automation and everything you're doing, not only was the project way easier to kind of get to the point you wanted to be at, but the application worked better once you understood the kind of the end.
Everything was better, Conrad. Even the process of building it the second time round, because I knew all the pitfalls that I could potentially run into, I was planning those as I was building the second time round. So I didn't hit any of those. So it was faster, more reliable, and basically just leverage all that experience. By the way, another really useful thing, because you're building with AI, if you start a V2, that V2 can have access to all your notes and documents, whatever you built from V1. So it can also extract those same lessons, but you need to point it to them, right? So, yeah. That's right.
I think the word that maybe we've said the most in here besides AI is learning, right? Like this is such a cool learning opportunity. And we are at a place where, the other thing that stood out to me when you were talking is it's going to be really hard for some kid coming out of school that's AI native genius, 12 months from now, to come in and automate your process, because that person doesn't know your process. You know your process. I mean, each of us are in this weird crossroads where, we can use AI to automate so much of what we're doing. We shouldn't be afraid of that, frankly. If we don't do it, someone else is going to do it anyway. But that learning that we have alongside the agent is the learning that's going to enable us to sort of be managing the agents versus, I don't know, looking for a job somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah.
It definitely. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, that's why I'm hopeful for people saying humans won't have anything to do, and I'm like, no, humans still need to bring the imagination to the table and the decision making to the table ultimately. So I was eating. This is my favorite time of year. We again, we'll wrap up here in a second, but this is my favorite time of year. Last night for dinner, I had garden zucchini, fresh garden tomatoes, fresh corn, like all of this stuff that was not purchased at a grocery store. It came out of the ground. A lot of it in my yard. Some of it cucumbers, like between my garden and my dad's garden. Like that was my dinner, and it was just unbelievable. It is what I love to eat, is this fresh food right out of the ground. And it kind of got me thinking about how, 50 years from now, robots are going to be, planting and harvesting and delivering all of this food. And I'm still going to be more in love with the tomato out of my garden than whatever the robot out in the farm did, without me. Like the real natural, the real learning, that like there is life is bigger and more important than most of the things most of us do every day. I mean, doctors saving lives, and I'm not going to argue this on every job, but there's so many aspects of life that are impossible to replace, and frankly become much more valuable as we kind of take some of the drudgery, the dull, the drudgery, the other things out of our job and out of our life. I'm with you. I have high hopes for humanity in the future. And it's going to be a while before we're all out of work, if that's the path this is going down anyway. But Zach, talking to you about AI is always a motivation to me. I love how you were such an early adopter. I love hearing about your learnings. Everybody, I know Zach has offered before, I've offered before. If you feel stuck, you're not quite sure where to start, please reach out to us. We're on LinkedIn. We're easy to find. Just drop us a note. We're happy to spend a little. and we have great success with workshops with people like, and the reviews we get are phenomenal, right? People walking out of those sessions saying, wow, like I see AI in a completely different way. So yeah, me and Conrad have done this, and we're doing this. So
and we're going to have some workshops across the United States later. I haven't talked to you about coming out to London around DPW to see if we want to try and get something going together. I'll probably just have a short amount of time in London, but for sure I want to see you. I want to sit down and kind of go through some of this stuff, and we're here to help folks. Just reach out. Any parting words, Zach? Anything we should have talked about we didn't talk about with AI and procurement?
No, but look, it's a never-ending journey, but it's super empowering. And if you feel negative about it, I guarantee you there's a way that we can kind of frame you to a more positive direction. Again, just reach out, and once you see the art of the possible, and once you feel confident using some of these tools, you'll never go back.
Well, and just so no one thinks this is a bait and switch, we're going to ask you for money here. That's not the point of saying reach out. I would say both of us are evangelists, and we've been through this journey, and we just kind of want to help each of you kind of make it as well. So would love to hear from you. Everybody, don't forget to like, comment, and share another great episode with Zach, the man, the myth of London. And we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, Zach.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Conrad.